Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Police Services Board to order. Can I start with a motion to reconvene in open session? Moved by Carl. Seconded by Ian. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So each year at the first board meeting of the year, the board elects its chair and vice chair for the coming year. So I'll be chairing the meeting for the elections of the two positions. We'll be starting with the vice chair. So I'm going to start by calling for nominations for the position of vice chair for the Police Services Board for 2022. Carl, you're on mute.
Jill, can you hear me?
Somebody you'd like to nominate?
I do. I'd
Yes.
like to nominate Karen Schnarr, please.
Okay. Do we have someone to?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table to nominate Dr. Karen Schnarr for the position of vice chair. Any objections? That is carried.
Just as a point of order, it's very difficult to hear you, Jill, and just from a governance perspective, you may want to once again just redo that portion. My apologies for interjecting, but I think you're scrambled on the call.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can repeat that motion. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor that Dr. Karen Schnarr be nominated for the position of vice chair.
On the floor,
It's lagging.
Dr. Karen Schnarr.
So just go, I would just go like a.
For 2022.
One more
All those
time.
One more time, please.
So we have a motion on the floor that Dr. Karen Schnarr be nominated for the position of vice chair for the Waterloo Regional Police Services Board for 2022. All those in favor? You could raise your hands. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, that is carried. Sorry, my screen is frozen. So I didn't see all the hands up until I looked on the screen. Thank you. So that motion is carried. So can I now have a motion to close the nominations for the position of vice chair for the Police Services Board? So that's moved by Carl, seconded by Rosita, that the nominations for the vice chair for the Police Services Board be closed. All those in favor? Any objections? That is carried. Are you willing to accept the nomination of vice chair?
I am, thank you.
So with her acceptance, Dr. Schnarr is declared elected vice chair for the Waterloo Regional Police Services Board for 2022. Congratulations. Okay, I'm now going to move on to agenda item 5.2, which is the election of the chair. I would like to call for nominations for the position of chair of the Police Services Board for 2022. Rosita?
I would like to nominate Chair Redmond to be the chair of the Police Services Board.
Can I have a seconder?
I would second that nomination.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table to nominate Chair Karen Redmond for the position of vice chair for the Waterloo Regional Police Services. Chair, did I say vice chair? Sorry, position of chair for the Waterloo Regional Police Services Board for 2022. All those in favor? Any objections? That is carried. Chair Redmond did send her regrets for this meeting, but prior to the meeting, that nomination of chair if nominated. So with her acceptance, is declared, but I would like to call for a motion to close the nominations for the position of chair. Do I have a motion to close the nominations? Moved by Rosita, seconded by Carl. All those in favor? Any objections? That is carried. So again, as I had indicated, Chair Redmond had indicated that she would accept the nomination of chair. So with her acceptance, Chair Redmond is declared re-elected as chair for the Police Services Board for 2022. Given that not in attendance for today's meeting, Vice Chair Schnarr, are you willing to preside over the meeting?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I'll pass the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody, and thank you to the first board meeting of 2022. I want to start off by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contribution to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. And very personally, I want to say I've had the opportunity to learn from Indigenous individuals who have so generously given their time to help me better understand their history so I can learn going forward on a very personal level as well. I want to move to agenda item 6.0, which is any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, I will move on to agenda item number 8.0, which is consent agenda items. And let me ask my board colleagues, does anyone have any items in the consent agenda they would like to have moved to the regular part of the agenda? Seeing none, can I ask for a motion? Sorry, do we need a motion to approve consent? Yeah, so can I ask for a motion to approve the consent items on the agenda? Thank you, Ian, seconded by Carl. All of those in favor of that? Thank you, and we've got unanimous consent for that. Thank you so much. Agenda item 9.0, any business arising from the minutes that were part of your package. Seeing none, I will move on to item 10.0, which is correspondence. The first 10.1, the Canadian Association of Police Governance call for resolutions, and I'm going to turn that over to Jill unless Ian wants to get into the conversation before I move to that. Go ahead, Ian.
Well, I guess just one question, and maybe Jill can answer this. Over the course of the previous year of board meetings, there have been a couple of occasions when we've asked either the chief or the chair to, or for specific issues around advocacy, and which I think would be appropriately, might appropriately be constituted as resolutions. So just wanted to know if when we've done that over the course, are those things that we will move forward through resolutions to the CAPG?
I look for guidance from either Jill or the chief related to that in terms of, I don't remember us having some of you, but I look to Jill or the chief for any guidance related to process for that. Nobody wants to jump into that one.
Thanks very much, Chair Schnarr, and thank you for the inquiry. Certainly, obviously there's a couple of key items that we're very much focused on, particularly around legislation as we look to the new year. So there would be an opportunity, to Mr. McLean's comments, around actually working with Jill to discuss a series of key items that the board may be interested in advocating on at the national level. This is, of course, we're well represented at that table with Councillor Kiefer as a member of the CPG. And so I think that, if the board is comfortable, Jill and I can discuss mutual areas where we're both advocating and aligned on those positions as we look to 2022 and beyond. So pleased to do that, Chair Schnarr.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, let me turn it over to Jill in case she has any additional things she wants to add to that piece, or just background related to the item.
Thank you, Chair Schnarr and members of the board. This item deals with the annual call for the CAPG for resolutions. And any resolutions we would submit would be presented to the members at the CAPG annual general meeting, which is taking place at their annual conference in September. So if the board does have any resolutions that they want considered, we do actually have until May 31st.
Sorry, Sandy, you wanted to jump in there?
I was just going to suggest that, Karen, if you and Jill both have your mics on at the same time, we get a whole lot of feedback. So just try to make sure the other's speaking.
I haven't been actually. When we've been doing this, I've been muted.
Okay, so sorry about that. So we do have until May 31st to submit any resolutions. So in any discussions that do come out of some advocacy policy discussions that we have with the board, and I will work with Chief Larkin on bringing some of those items to the board. We certainly have some time if we do want to submit some resolutions to be considered by the CAPG at their annual meeting come September. So stay tuned on that one.
Thank you, Jill. Any other comments on item 10.1, that Canadian Association of Police Governance call for resolutions? Seeing none, I'm going to keep going here. Police Services Board report. There are none. So we're good. We can move past that agenda item. That's great. Item 12.0, Chief of Police reports, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Larkin in case there are elements here that he would like to highlight, and we will have a motion for item 12.1 as we go down this list.
Thanks so much, Chair Schnarr. And first and foremost, on behalf of Deputy Chief Crowell and Deputy Chief Hilton, happy January and happy New Year and happy 2022. It's great to come together in our first public session as we look ahead to 2022. No doubt we continue to face some of the challenges of the pandemic, but I'm very pleased to get into a series of police reports. The first one, as Chair Schnarr alluded to, is in relation to supply and installation of a digital antenna system. And it's actually, there is a recommendation around the tender approval. Joining us today, we have Ms. Kirsten Hand, our Director of Finance and Assets, as well as our Chief Purchasing Officer, as well as Director Bob Hillhorst of Information Technology, should you have any questions around the technological perspectives and the advancements. So I'll turn it over to Director Hand, and should you have any questions, we'd be pleased to answer them. Over to you, Kirsten. Good morning.
Good morning. The report before you today deals with the replacement of the digital antenna system, which facilitates the use of the voice radio system within the courthouse. It's at end of life, so we did a competitive procurement process. Only 2 tenders were received, so as per the bylaw, if we get less than 3 tenders, then it must come to the board for approval. So there's a motion before you today in the report that recommends that you accept the tender of MRC Systems Incorporated for the supply and installation of the digital antenna system in the amount of $168,123.78 plus applicable taxes. And this is all being included within the budget. So it has a funding source identified in the report as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Sandy has her hand up, so I'm going to go to her first.
Thank you. Appreciate the low tender, but I always wonder when there's such a discrepancy between 2 tenders if there's something missing. So I trust there was a good analysis done of the 2 tenders.
Yeah, so the tender information identified all the requirements for the system, and it was deemed that both tenders were compliant, that they would be able to provide the necessary product. And so at this point, yes, we are recommending that the lower price bid be the one that is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Do you have any follow-up questions to that, or that's good? Okay. Any other questions for Kirsten related to this item? Seeing none, could I have a mover to approve the supply and installation of the digital antenna system? Moved by Ian, seconded by Rosita. All of those in favor, if you can indicate just by raising your hand. Carried. Thank you so much, colleagues. So thank you so much, Kirsten. Nicely done there. That was a good one. I'm going to move to item 12.2, which is the Homicide in Canada 2020 report.
Thanks so much, Chair Snar. And again, this is a 2020 statistical report from Stats Canada, and in keeping with our updating and reporting to the Police Services Board, all Stats Canada reports come to the board for public view and public review, as well as a localized oversight. And so joining me today, we have Ms. Margaret Glode, our Manager of Strategic Services, and Ms. Denise Lowe. Both I know are well known to you. There are regular presenters on many different data sets. I'm going to turn it over to Margaret and Denise to take you through the Homicide in Canada 2020 report, as well as we can respond to any questions the board may have. So good morning, Margaret, and good morning, Denise.
Good morning. Thank you for having us today. Denise has prepared a few highlights, and she's going to step through the report with you today. So I'll just hand it over to you, Denise. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. If not, just let me know. Okay. All right. Sounds good. As the chief said, I'm here to talk about Homicide in Canada for the 2020 report. This report was released by Statistics Canada in late November 2021, and it reports on short-term and long-term trends in homicide, primarily at the national and provincial levels. Firstly, in this report, homicide is defined as first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, and infanticide. It does not include any attempt homicides in this report. So in 2020, there were 743 reported homicide victims in Canada, which accounts for 0.2% of all police violent criminal code offenses in Canada. This translates to about 1.95 victims per 100,000 population, and this is the highest reported rate since 2005. In the Kitchener-Cambridge Waterloo CMA, we reported 8 homicide victims in 2020, or 1.32 victims per 100,000. And in the report, you'll see the comparison between our CMA against other CMAs with a population of greater than 500,000. Over the last decade, homicide rate in the Kitchener-Cambridge Waterloo CMA has fluctuated, with 2020 reporting the third highest rate since 2010. Oh, sorry, yeah, 2010. And in 2020, shooting continued to be the most popular method of homicide in Canada. In our CMA, there was one reported firearm-related homicide, or 0.17 per 100,000 population. Nationally as well, gang-related homicides has gone down, and in our CMA, we've reported 0 gang-related homicides in 2020. Lastly, in 2020, nationally, there was a decrease in national crime rate, and a lot of it was attributed to COVID-19. However, homicides continue to have a significant influence over the overall and violent CSIs due to the severity of the crime, and has actually increased in 2020. And that concludes my summary for this report.
Thank you so much, Denise. These are always really, really interesting presentations. We get a little snapshot of what's happening in the area. So thank you to you. Thank you to Marg for this as well. Colleagues, do you have any questions related to this? Mayor Shantz.
Thank you. Two questions. You're specifically addressing homicide. and you specifically said it doesn't include attempted homicide. I wonder if, and this might be a question for the chief, but is there, like, do we have a high rate of attempted homicide? Is there a discrepancy there? And also, where do you see those stats going in for 2021?
Go ahead, Chief.
And I can jump in. Go ahead.
I was going to say for your first question, attempt homicides are reported, but they're just not captured in this report specifically. So we do know of the number of attempt homicides, and generally speaking, there are more attempt homicides than there are actual homicides. And secondly, for the trends in 2021, there are a lot of complex factors that cause a homicide to happen. So it does fluctuate quite a bit yearly. So it's kind of hard to say whether or not we would be up or down in the years to come. But generally, the trends do fluctuate quite a bit.
So maybe I'll just add that obviously something we monitor, and it's very difficult to look at trends or patterns with a one-year perspective, which is why we like to look at 5 or beyond. And so it's an excellent question, Mayor Shantz. When we look at 2021, we had 2 homicides throughout the year. So again, 2020 and 2021 are anomalies in many different senses based on the pandemic and COVID. I don't have the data in front of me around attempt homicides, but we can certainly get that. But again, attempt homicides is something we monitor and watch. And equally, when you look at our community, when you look at access to healthcare, you look at access to, many potential victims are actually, thankfully, subjected and have access to a really good healthcare system where we see survival rates increase. So we can definitely do that. But again, 2021 was an anomaly as well. That report will be out always a year behind from a Stats Canada perspective. So we don't know our comparators compared to other jurisdictions exactly. We obviously look locally amongst our key comparators. But, tragically last year, a homicide in Wellesley, as well as one in Kitchener year-end, which drives some of the data. But we did have 16 shootings last year, which was also a decline from 2020. That being said, our totality in 2020 and 2021, we see violent crime and crime severity, which exceeds the provincial average and is slightly below the national average. So there's still work to be done. And I know that Deputy Hilton and Superintendent Fendon continue to work on crime reduction strategies, particularly around violent crime. And I'll speak to that later in my monthly report around robbery reduction and some of the key areas where the potential for violence is actually leads to some of those other challenges, which lead to, attempted murders and or homicides. There are always silver linings in this. One of the areas we monitor very closely is intimate partner homicides. Again, although intimate partner violence continues to be a significant challenge, both locally, provincially, and nationally, we did not see deaths locally as a result of intimate partner violence. And so there's always, in all of these reports, opportunities to see some of the good happening in our community, but also point directions for around service-wide and system-wide change to prevent crime.
Thank you, Chief Larkin. Mr. Giovinazzo.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think the chief may have answered partly one of the questions I had, but one of the comments I looked at, I appreciate the presentation. I don't look at one data point as being an indicator of trend, but when I do look at population growth since 2014, 2015 within the region, and I look at the overall trend line, at least from my vantage, it looks like it's an increasing trend, which is somewhat alarming. Falling below the national average, well, that's great, but we always try to do better within our own community compared to the national average. The other question I had, and I think partially you answered that, Chief, was with the increase in violent crimes, with weapons and everything we've seen in our community over the last couple of years, is this a lagging indicator, homicide? And I don't mean to belittle or minimalize the impact of homicides, but in policing, do we normally see increased guns on the street or weapons being detained or through detentions as being, the precursor to, more homicides? It's just a question I had on a high level.
Thank you so much. There's so many different complex factors when you actually, when we look at the motive of a homicide or an attempt homicide, when you actually go through all the different factors, there's many different motives. And so it's very difficult to pinpoint one trend. Clearly the proliferation of handguns in particular in our community, I would say, increasingly over the last 3 to 5 years is cause for concern, because then people do use them, and the potential for serious injury and serious harm is great. But you'll note at the start of this year, the weapon of choice was knives, which, equally can be really challenging and cause serious harm and injury. So there's really different pinpoints. So what I will tell you is that, each homicide has a unique characteristic, but some of the trends of the shootings and those types of processes, we would, in a general perspective, say often related to street crime activity, related to the drug trade, related to gang activity, and related to organized crime. Particularly the drug trade is one of intimidation, one of bullying, one of actually a robbery based as we roll through here. So again, many different factors as we roll through here. And there, may be a good opportunity actually in the coming months for our major crime team to provide an overview of the work that they do and how they break down, factors in each of the homicide investigations. And Superintendent Fenton can coordinate his team to come back.
I appreciate that, Chief. I guess maybe I should have qualified myself an overall increase in violence in various forms within our community, not just weapons, but it could be other forms, as you said, intimate partner, and et cetera. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Mark had her hand up a moment ago. My internet is a little bit unstable, but I just didn't know if I think the hand is down now, but I just wanted to see, Mark, if there was any additional information you wanted to add there before I go to Mr. McLean.
Just a brief comment about the lagging factor. This report is from 2020, so there is a little bit of a time delay. Stats Canada releases all the official criminal offense summary, as the chief mentioned, in July of the following year. Now, this is a little bit further delayed. There's a very detailed homicide survey that after every incident it's completed, and it has a whole variety of additional factors in comparison to other crimes. So the delay in this reporting is due to Stats Canada doing a much more thorough analysis and reporting on the homicides based on the additional information and the details in those homicide surveys. So that just, I wanted to help explain the delay or the lag time in this report coming out.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. I think there you go, Ian. Yeah.
Okay. Through you, Chair Schnarr. And I guess it's more of a question for the chief. I mean, this report, and you kind of go through some of the data points, guns and gangs and availability of illegal handguns, are those really the driving? I mean, there's a lot of pieces in here, but those seem to be the common themes that every time we get a report on, whether it's this report from StatsCan or others that are presented to us, those really are the challenge, or the major issues that are driving violent crime and the severity of it, including homicide. Is that? I mean, it seems to be that common theme when I'm reading through our packages and the reports that we get from you. Just wanted to see whether I'm missing anything there, but those seem to be the things that come springing off the page.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. McLean. And it's, again, a fairly complex, crime is such a complex, unique, part of society that there's uniqueness in all of the totality of the data. There's different drivers and different pieces. But when we look at sort of, a key example of the most recent challenges with, the drugstore pharmacy robberies, the underlying issue there is addiction. They're not actually targeting those commercial properties for money or product. They're actually getting illicit prescription pills, which we believe are then being resold and or used within our community. So it's very, very unique. When we look at, so for example, again, this is a 2020 report, but when I look at 2021, 2 homicides. One of them was a familial homicide. And the second was, we believe, related to, ongoing street activity. That was by stabbing. But obviously, the propensity of handguns does raise those concerns. In the late quarter of 2021, Minister Jones and the Solicitor General, in partnership with the Commissioner Karika, the OPP, we are rolling out a whole guns and gang strategy for the province, because we recognize that one of the undercurrents of violent crime is street crime activity, organized crime, unlawful handguns in our community. And I say handguns because that's really impacting Ontario. Other parts of the country, it's long guns. We don't have the same challenge locally or throughout the GTA. So there's really some uniqueness to all of this in many different ways.
Thank you so much, Mr. McLean. Is any other follow-ups to that, or you're good? You're good. Excellent. Any other questions related to this report? Seeing none, thank you so much, Denise and Mark. I always enjoy is the wrong word, but I always find these incredibly informative, because it not only, as Mr. Giovanazzo was talking about, lets us see trends. Where are we going? Where have we been in the past? But also comparators to other regions, which sometimes is comparing apples to oranges, just because we've got different demographics. But always helpful to get additional information to help inform decision making. So thank you so much to both of you for your report today. Much appreciated. With that, I'm going to move on to item 12.3, which is the overview of the Community Engagement and Wellbeing Division. I know we're not supposed to say we're looking forward to presentations from one area more so than others, because it's all interesting and informative, but I gotta admit, I'm really looking forward to this presentation today, and I see John and Beth are here, so I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Chair Schnarr, and I'll just do an introduction. As the board is aware, is that within the last 12 months, we've been working internally on restructuring and actually responding to the evolution of policing, as well as the path forward. And one of those was the realignment and the creation of a community engagement and wellbeing branch. And it's been a work in progress since June of 2021. And over the last 6 months, we've been, realigning internal resources and doing a whole bunch of human resource processes to fill these locations and that. And there's a series of strategies that the board will see in the coming months of the work that we do. But we're very proud of this work led by Deputy Chief Hilton and her team. And joining us today, we have Staff Superintendent John Goodman, who oversees neighborhood policing, along with Superintendent Sharon Havel, who oversees the patrol divisions. And so, this works very closely with all of our patrol areas, as well as our investigative areas led by Superintendent Fenton. And at the heart of that, of this team of approximately 45 members, leading that team is Inspector Elizabeth Houston. And so we'll turn it over to John and Beth. Good morning.
Morning, Chief. Morning, Chair Schnarr. Morning, Board. Happy New Year to everybody. As the Chief has covered it off very well, this has been a very exciting time getting this up and running. It's always nice to be part of something new. And I'm going to turn over to Beth now to walk you through the Community Engagement and Wellbeing branch.
Thanks, Staff Super. Good morning, Chair Schnarr and members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this morning about CEW. Today, I have the pleasure of providing you with a high-level overview of the Community Engagement and Wellbeing branch. Without exaggeration, I could likely speak to you for hours about this dedicated group and the work being done by this branch, because I am so impressed by them and proud of the work they're doing. Jill is kind enough to help me with the technical side of things this morning. So if we could go to the first slide, Jill, please. As you're aware, Community Engagement and Wellbeing launched officially at the end of June last year. So the branch is made up of 2 different units, the Community Engagement Unit, which I'll refer to as CEU, and the Direct Action Response Teams, which we'll call DART. CEU is centrally located out of South Division currently, while DART is housed out of Central Division. And although centralized in location, each team does have a regional mandate, meaning they do work throughout the region. This is really important as it gives us the ability to move our resources as needed and provide focus as an entire unit or even branch on any given area or issue within the region whenever appropriate. Next slide, please, Jill. So here's a breakdown of our staffing. We have one staff sergeant, Jason Mulholland, who oversees both of these units. I can't say enough good things about him or how instrumental he's been in getting this unit up and running. DART has 2 teams. Their authorized complement is broken down into 10 constables and 1 sergeant per team, and they work days and afternoon shifts. A CEU is also 2 teams with an authorized complement of 9 constables and 1 sergeant per team, and they currently work days to align their hours with the community partners they work closely with. Next slide, please. So here's a high-level overview of the branch as an entirety. What's interesting about this unit in this branch is how these 2 units approach situations and issues in very different but complementary ways. DART provides targeted enforcement efforts which have direct contributions to public safety, such as warrants, targeting prolific offenders, and supporting large gatherings, while CEU provides community support, the engagement, the interaction, and the connections to community resources and partners. Both approaches play an important role in public safety. Next slide, please. So here we have the DART mandate. Over the last couple of weeks, there have been several media releases highlighting some of the significant work being done by the DART teams. In the last 2 weeks alone, they've conducted 4 high-impact warrants throughout the region. From those warrants, they have seized a significant amount of controlled substances, a firearm, stolen property, a stolen vehicle, evidence pertaining to a number of thefts and break-and enters throughout the region. But there's one in particular I'd like to highlight. In addition to drugs, weapons, and property, they also located multiple females within the residence who are suspected to be the victims of human trafficking. In collaboration with our human trafficking unit and victim services, these young ladies were connected with resources, provided a safe place to go, and one young lady was even driven back to her home hours away. Situations like these can have life-changing positive outcomes. Next slide, please. So if we look at the operational priorities for DART, we can see they act a little bit as jacks of all trades for the service. They are the quick response uniform presence. They provide direct, impactful contributions to community safety through the work listed on this slide. DART participates in road safety campaigns. They are detailed to provide support for major and special events and protests throughout the region. They also supplement neighborhood policing by immediately responding to priority calls for service whenever possible. And they are also routinely used to assist various branches within investigative services. They are ready to assist as needed, all while balancing their own work and mandate. Next slide, please. So DART and the CEWB staff sergeant have been responsible for creating and staffing the Safe Semester Operational Plan, which runs annually as our universities and college return to school each fall. They provide high visibility presence and enforcement for events such as Canada Day, St. Patrick's Day, Homecoming, Oktoberfest, as well as any of the other major events throughout the region. They have written and likely executed over a dozen search warrants since we've launched, and they have seized numerous firearms. DART provides consistent presence in the entertainment districts to supplement North Division neighborhood policing, and they have established an excellent working relationship with the AGCO to ensure that licensed establishments are following the requirements of the Liquor License Act. Next one, Jill, please. So now we're going to flip over to the other side of the house to CEU. This slide highlights some of our priorities and where we're focusing our efforts currently. All of these principles are important, but the one I would like to highlight on this slide is where we talk about building trust between the police and the community that we serve. We continue to work each day with integrity, always with the goal of building trust and creating positive connections and interactions with the members of our community. This work is ongoing. What we are also cognizant of is that this work takes time. We can't simply walk into a neighborhood or a community, announce that we're here, and tell people that they need to be our friend and work with us and trust us. It doesn't work that way. Engagement, trust, relationships, friendships, those things all take time and consistency. It requires honesty, good faith, and the will to make things better. What I would say about CEU is that the superpower of this unit is its ability to bring people together, to have conversations, and to problem solve collaboratively. This holds true for individuals, community partners and resources, families, neighborhoods, and at times our partners in the healthcare and judicial systems to ensure that the big picture is really understood when working through emergent situations. The power of a conversation is incredible. Everything starts with a conversation and a willingness and want to make things better. And this is where CEU excels. Next slide, please. One of the North Stars of this unit is mental health response and the collaboration with our community partners to provide the best, most appropriate response to situations. We are working towards the implementation and development of the Crisis Call Diversion Program, which will see a mental health professional embedded into our communication center to manage, triage, and potentially divert calls with a mental health component, and which meet a certain criteria away from a traditional police response to a more appropriate resource. Additionally, CEU members continue to participate in the 2 connectivity tables throughout the region to bring forward complex situations which require a multi-pronged response from dozens of involved community partners. CEU provides direct points of contacts for the region's BIAs, community groups, and we work collaboratively with neighborhood policing divisions to provide uniformed visibility in the core areas throughout the region. In our first 6 or 7 months, we've worked hard to create multiple strategies in regards to youth and youth engagement, mental health, and homelessness. These are in the final stages of review with the executive leadership team, and I believe that we'll have an opportunity to provide you with some more details at the meeting in March, I believe. One of the biggest questions and most important questions we bring into almost any situation is who else can help? This is crucial, as we know we cannot police our way out of complex social issues. These issues take collaboration with all perspectives and available resources and community partners. Next slide, please, Jill. So it's really important for CEU as a unit to be very respectful of the relationships and the collaborations that we've developed. As I said, our superpower is bringing the right people together for important conversations. We've been fortunate enough to develop some fantastic relationships through the community already. And these have taken time, consistency of showing up, and actually specifically when things are not going wrong, and lots of conversations. CEU works in collaboration with DART and investigative services to help provide community support after major incidents. We have formed some excellent working relationships with our regional hospitals, which are so incredibly impactful when we are dealing with complex mental health situations. The ability to be able to pick up the phone and speak directly to the right person who needs all of the information has been invaluable. Mayor Shantz, you'll be pleased to know that we've made some significant strides in providing mental health resources to some of the rural communities, and we are already seeing some successes coming from those efforts. CEU continues to engage and work collaboratively with rural community partners as they did previously. We are in the schools delivering bike safety presentations, and we're excited. We've just signed up our team for the Coldest Night of the Year event in Elmira at the end of February. We've worked hard and consistently to build relationships with some of our diverse communities. True relationships take time to build trust and rapport. We are very respectful of this and committed to this work. One of the most significant partnerships CEU has is with the impact teams of CMHA. We work very closely with them on almost all complex mental health calls for service. We're actually partnering with Impact to deliver enhanced mental health training to all members of the service during in-service training this year. As importantly, CEU works closely with neighborhood policing, often receiving referrals from dedicated frontline officers who recognize that some calls for service and individuals just need more in-depth support and resources. We're working with all of the new recruits to expose them to the CEU way of policing and to make them aware of all of the fantastic community resources and partners available to assist them in their work. Next slide, Jill. And that's actually going to bring us to the end of the CEW snapshot this morning, but I will close in saying that in the 7 months since we've launched, these teams have done significant and impactful work for this community. They are dedicated and passionate about community safety and for making life better for the people of Waterloo region. I'm very much looking forward to sharing many more of their success stories and contributions with you in the future. So thanks for the opportunity to share with you this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I'm sure my colleagues could see why I was so excited to have this presentation today to highlight some of the things that are already being done, even though it's fairly nascent in terms of what this team is doing. Let me open the floor to my colleagues for any questions or comments coming out of that presentation. Mayor Shantz.
Thank you. Thank you, Inspector Houston, for the presentation. It was helpful to understand something that I've noted in a few different places, and I'll note again here, is the difference between the townships and the cities. And so, you know, one of our concerns in the townships is getting left behind. We've had good relationships with our officers that have been here, and we've lost our actual physical space and that sort of presence. So I've had a number of comments about what's going on and how are we going to be supportive. So I do appreciate. I like what I've heard today about how you want to connect and everything else. I guess maybe my question would be, how are you going to continue or have a continuity with those initiatives that have already happened, particularly in the rural areas? I think sometimes in the cities, this is just my impression. I grew up in the city, but I've lived in the townships for a long time. In the townships, a lot of relationships happen organically. And I think in a lot of ways, the cities are trying to recreate that by doing neighborhood sorts of initiatives. And so how are you going to ensure that you don't lose the good relationships that are in the townships as you sort of pull out and centralize?
Chief, do you want to take a crack at that, or would you like me to go ahead?
Go ahead, Beth, and then I'll provide some commentary, but please go ahead. Appreciate all the work you and your team are doing.
Absolutely. So the consistency you would have had out there previously would have been Sergeant Kelly Preble and Constable Dave Cassidy. They are both very valued members of our branch currently. So they are still here and they still are out there, out in the rural communities. They're the ones doing a lot of this work, understanding that they will not always be in this branch because there's natural movement and transition. We've already kind of got a plan in place that Dave has kind of created some sidekicks within our unit, and he's bringing, we've already identified, I think, 3 officers from our unit in addition to Dave that are going to be doing attending a lot of the rural events and the community meetings to have them understand the intricacies of the townships, as well as really create the relationships and make themselves known. Some of the community groups out there, acceptance is a big thing, right? So that takes time as well. And that's something that we certainly recognize and have taken steps to start to get that ball moving already. But the townships are very near and dear to our hearts as well. Like we've got some country kids in our office out here, so they gravitate to wanting to spend some time in the townships, and those relationships remain extremely important to them. So I am very confident, although it's a different rollout right now. You are valued out there, absolutely, and it's a priority for us to maintain those.
So Mayor Sean, maybe I'll just add that, the creation of new concepts and new ideas is really also change. And I think that we have work to do, particularly with our township, partners and relations and our stakeholders, including government, to explain the work that we're doing. Who do they contact? Who's their connection? One of the challenges in policing is that, we're a large organization. And we're in transit. Our members are in transit. So, for example, some of the individuals working in the rural community were seeking change in their career, and so they applied to new positions. And I think one of the key things that I know that Shirley, John, and Beth are working on is the succession piece. So, for example, when we're now going out in the rural communities, meeting with various stakeholders, the key individual, the one that has the trust built, whether it be with a specific neighborhood, a specific community, or even with township staff, is bringing somebody along and going, this person you can also call, or this person's with me. And I think that that's the work we need to be doing. But clearly, as we're currently, Shirley and I and the operation team meeting with all the different various municipalities and townships, as well as with our political governors, likely in February, I'd like to seek permission from the board to actually roll out a larger engagement and information piece with all municipal and township councils, so they truly understand the essence of the change. And equally, we produce a lot of public information every single day. Ms. Greeno's team is publishing significant info, but I'm not sure that everybody, the key stakeholders, everybody receives information differently, but there is a way to subscribe and to get into our ongoing list, et cetera. And I think there's work to be done on those pieces. So stay tuned. Your comment around physical bricks and mortar is, I understand, obviously we had a series of facility challenges and budgetary issues, which led to it, and quite frankly, operational pieces. But as we roll out a new revised review of our boundaries, our workload demand across the service, I think that one of the key pieces we'll see is that, obviously our rural areas are growing. We've seen population change, specifically in Wilmot and Woolwich. There's some significant growth, and then followed by North Dumfries and Wellesley to a smaller extent based on really the Provincial Places to Grow Act. But we know that we're seeing some growth, and in particular, if you look at Woolwich, south of Victoria or Highway 7, we're seeing significant growth almost to, your township touching Wellington County, which is really unique. And maybe I'm aging myself, but every time I drive through, I can name the farms that used to be there. And now they're neighborhoods. And so I think that, that's one of the pieces of work, and we appreciate your feedback. And I want to reassure you that our commitment is to always strive to improve, to do better. And we recognize and value the feedback from our townships.
Thank you, Chief. Sandy, did you want to follow up with that a little bit?
Yeah, just to say thank you to Inspector Houston and to Deputy Hilton and Deputy Carl too for all the work that you and your teams do across the region. You've got a very complex job, and so I do appreciate that, and I do look forward to some presentations to councils coming soon, and just explaining how DART and the CEU will work together, and how we can expect policing to look, and to Chief Larkin's point also, looking for a little more presence, more support. I think it's been 30 or 40 years since we have had the very same level of support, and we have grown considerably in there. So I'm hoping to see more visibility. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Mr. Giovinazzo.
Through you, Madam Chair, I want to springboard off of what my colleague just said. First of all, thank you and congratulations to the team. When I look at the launch of the logistics for the CEWB, I think I got that right. And in a very short time, I really appreciate the highlights of all the successes that both sub teams have had under this initiative. So I congratulate you on that, especially during COVID, I say, because it's a lot of relationship building, and unfortunately that's face to face. So I really want to congratulate you. I look forward to some future successes, and I would ask, if possible, through the chief and the deputies, especially with the CEU, it's really worthwhile for me to hear from the community vantage, right? And it's going to take some time to get some traction, to hear what the community says about these initiatives and the fine work that's being done out there. So I'm eager, if that's possible in the future, of updates, really to get some feedback from the community, to hear the impacts, and you get a bit of a different dimension and vantage of the success of these initiatives. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to future successes and updates from you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you. If I can take a moment, thank you so much for the presentation. And I think what really struck me about what you talked to us today was what we've been hearing. We've been hearing, certainly when we were at Regional Council, we've been hearing from the community that they want to see more efforts in terms of diversion and partnership related to that. And in your report, we're already seeing with the work, not that this is, it just started, but with the work that this, these units are doing, that, there are tangible steps being taken related to, okay, what can we do to help diversion, particularly in the mental health area? These are strategies related to homelessness and how we can work and become involved. And I think that's what we heard from the region. That's what we heard from the community as part of the budget discussions back in December. And I was very appreciative of the fact that your presentation today showed tangible steps in terms of the action that's being taken in these areas, recognizing, of course, there's no Band-Aid solution here. This is a long-term partnership conversation to build those levels of trust. And I was also very pleased to hear you talk about succession, because you spend a lot of time, you build a relationship with people, and then, of course, as is very natural in organizations, people look at other opportunities, and it's hard because you want them to, be successful in their career, but you also want to keep them because they've got these relationships and they're doing such fantastic work. So great to hear you're already thinking, from when you started this project, you're already thinking about all of those pieces as well. So I echo what Mr. Givenoso said. I would like to see this, particularly the impact and the community voice on the other side come back at a future board meeting, maybe 6 months, and once you've been up and operational, maybe for about a year, just to see, what we're hearing, sort of a phase 2 of this. So thank you so very, very much for your presentation today. Very, very informative, and best of luck to these teams as they go forward and do this work. As Mr. Givenoso said, hard under COVID. So hopefully, fingers crossed, eventually we'll be back to sort of face-to-face discussions and meetings and relationship building in the future as well. So thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to turn to agenda item 12.4, which is the Respect in the Workplace initiative. And we've got folks joining us for that, but I will pass it over to Chief Larkin just to give a little introduction to this as well.
Thanks so much, Chair Schnarr, and happy to come back to the board with an update on respect in the workplace. Last year, what we just saw around the community engagement and well-being was part of our larger reorganization and our restructuring within the organization to meet the evolution and the changes of policing. One of those was also very much focused on the path forward, which is focused on equity and inclusion and diversity within our organization, as well as respect in the workplace, building an organization where our membership thrives. We're a large organization with just over 1,200 employees, 800 uniform, approximately 400 civilian employees. And for us to be successful and to provide the highest level of service, we must have an internal organization that is highly successful, well, and feeling included within the workplace, and also ensuring a respect in the organization. And although we officially launched a unit and a specialized area to oversee this, it's very much tied to the ongoing work that we've been doing since 2014 around the evolution of our culture, how we actually evolve who we are as an organization. We're people-based, that is our greatest asset. And the issues that we deal with are human, and they're complex. And of course, we're a 24-hour, 7-a-day operation. And so it requires significant inner workings. And so, at this time we have respect in the workplace. We've launched an official unit, although, you'll see some of the staffing recommendations around that. But it was the first signal of how we actually look at, the professional development branch around education, training, awareness, as well as even looking at our public complaint system. So what are the challenges that we're facing? What is the underlying issues that our community has? And admittedly, over the last 2 years, policing has been much in the eye of our community, much in the eye globally around reformation, around transformation. And our service is not unique to other services. And in fact, we have the similar challenges that other agencies have. We have workplace conflict. We have workplace challenges. We deal with investigating internal allegations of misconduct, workplace misconduct, harassment, etc. And so the work we've been doing is very much focused on that. We're very much committed to removing systemic barriers, addressing internal systemic discrimination, and it really formulates our overall strategy to a path forward. And we've always held the philosophy that if we're well internally, that if we're a thriving organization and internally, then externally, that we will actually exceed our community expectations. We'll continue to deliver the highest level of policing. And as we know, as an organization, we've not actually been without our challenges. And so very much proud of the work that has been going on since 2014, although really formalized around different areas with a series of recommendations. Today it's for information, but you'll note that we've been actively working on a number of different pieces. The board also, I'm very proud of the Police Services Board. This is embedded in your strategic business plan as a key issue and a key item to advance forward. And the reality is we must always continue as an organization, and ultimately as your chief, I have the responsibility to ensure that we consistently work to do better. And there's different points over the last number of years and over the history of our organization where we ought to have done better. And we must acknowledge that. We must also recognize that through that, individuals face harm and face an unhealthy workplace. And for that, we must always ensure that we do better, recognize it, reconcile it, and look to a better future. And so the work that Deputy Crowell and Superintendent Jen Davis, Inspector Jason Boucher, and Inspector Sloden Lakovic have been doing, along with our entire leadership team, our HR team, our risk management team, really everybody digging in, I do believe that we're actually advancing in the right path. And so I'm pleased to welcome Superintendent Jen Davis, who will take you through the report. We'd be pleased to answer any questions, but this is an interim update along all the different things that have been happening. But again, it's an important part of our continued commitment to our organizational culture, organizational change, which we believe, Mark, Shirley, and I, and our entire leadership team believe will lead to enhanced outcomes within our community from a policing, from a trust and confidence, and an overall healthy community. So welcome, Jennifer. Good morning.
Great. Thank you, Chief and Chair Schnarr and members of the board. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and share some insight into the work that has been occurring around the topic of respect in the workplace. And I find it ironic, it's wonderful following after Beth's presentation, which really spoke to the great work that we've been doing in the community about building relationships and connections and furthering that work. And this presentation is really on what are we doing internally as well to show our commitment to our members. And as the chief said, that is then resonated in everything that we do in our community. As highlighted in our organizational values, the Waterloo Regional Police Service is committed to providing a healthy and safe work environment in which our members conduct themselves ethically, honestly, and professionally, respecting others in everything that they do. And over the years, the service has demonstrated a commitment to reinforcing positive workplace culture by providing developmental training regarding workplace harassment and discrimination, facilitated by Bernardi Human Resource Law. And this was given to all of our senior and mid leaders. Additionally, the service has extended training to all of our acting supervisors, our field development officers, and all of our new hires when they attend their new employee orientation. However, it has been recognized that in order to truly build a collective commitment within the organization, where matters of incivility, harassment, and discrimination are eliminated, this training and this approach needs to be extended to members at all organizational levels. Building upon previously established efforts, the service committed in the current strategic business plan to develop a respect in the workplace portfolio. And efforts towards the development of that portfolio began in late June of 2021 with a commitment to build a system that ensures clear communication through the facilitation and respectful interactions of individuals, that promotes early intervention and resolution to workplace matters, that highlights a system of progressive response to workplace matters, and that ensures transparency, fairness, and impartiality. Workplace matters touch all organizations. The costs associated both directly and indirectly can be significant and deeply impactful. Additionally, the time it takes to complete an investigation has a negative impact on the well-being of all involved. In the reports that you had attached to your board package, you will see an illustration of the direct costs associated to these types of investigations over the past number of years, along with a chart identifying the average time required to investigate and come to resolution. These are two areas where it is anticipated that we will see a reduction in both cost and time involved in resolving workplace matters when building systems that reinforce expected behaviors and promote early intervention and resolution. Included in the work that has already been done was an assessment of current practices and measures. We reviewed existing procedures, our current goals of the strategic business plan, our equity, diversity, inclusion strategic plan, our 2020 Ipsos member survey. We reviewed legislative requirements. We did an environmental scan of other police agencies across Canada, and specifically of the Big 12 police agencies in Ontario. We reviewed applicable research and policies of other police organizations, as well as some non-police organizations. We held specific unit meetings. We reviewed our current training to identify gaps and opportunities. And we also researched enhanced training opportunities for investigators as well as our members. This process allowed us to identify where gaps and as such opportunities currently exist, and where processes can be built that better support member development, that better support a strengthened workplace culture, and ultimately increase our organizational performance. As a result of the work, the recommendation was presented to the chief to establish a standalone respect in the workplace unit. The unit will provide direction, advice, and coaching on appropriate workplace resolution mechanisms, supporting all members. They will support proactive and innovative solutions to interpersonal conflict matters, ensuring timely resolution to issues of incivility, harassment, and discrimination, ensure timely and complete tracking of all reported matters and outcomes, monitor for trends and types of complaints, recommend enhancements to training and support for employee development, liaise with and bridge all available resources, and engage with partners both internally and externally. The first identified step in the process now is to hire a manager trained in labor relations, investigations, mediation, and workplace restoration, who will oversee this unit. And as identified through the assessment phase, we'll work with myself and other members in the area on some first tasks, which will be to develop and implement some of the strategies mentioned above, create the transparent processes, build the reporting mechanisms, and identify and make recommendations on training, all the while building capacity and credibility of the unit. It's believed that these crucial first commitments will help to ensure a successful implementation of a scalable and sustainable respect in the workplace unit within the service. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very thorough presentation. Any questions or comments from my colleagues related to this? Mr. McLean.
Yeah, through you, Chair Schnarr, and I'm not sure if it's for Jen or for the chief. I go through part of this report dating from 2015 to 21, the external investigations. I think it's in there, but I just wanted to kind of raise it with the chief, I guess. Would that have been the start of when more external investigations became standard practice? And is for I guess when you see the numbers going up as they are, is that just getting up to what I guess a steady state when that we can expect those will be for the more serious investigations when you do get external investigations involved in them? So I guess it's maybe more of a chief question than for you, Jen.
Thanks so much, Mr. McLean. And, obviously, it actually, in very much, as Jennifer alluded to, it actually follows Inspector Houston's presentation and really Mayor Chant's comments, is that not only is our community evolving and our practices evolving, but similarly, the way that we manage internal conflict and respect in the workplace is evolving and changing. We've been through a series of different processes where we had internal members who were trained specifically in doing internal investigations. But again, this is somewhat muddied by the complexity and in many ways the antiquated Police Services Act. And so many of these investigations are lengthy. And so, and I also think, a positive outcome of some of the challenges our service and other services has faced is the willingness of members and employees to come forward with allegations of incivility, workplace harassment, and feeling that the complaints would be taken seriously. But it's a unique process. It's a very, the work that Jennifer's recommending will allow us to actually enhance and actually respond to workplace restoration in a much more expedient fashion. And I'll use the example. So, as I said, we used to have internal investigators, and quite frankly, there was concerns around implicit bias and independence. And so we moved to a different direction. Our human resources team and our legal services team, we actually did a call. We actually looked at sort of an RFP process to bring in a series of different external companies that would be on contract, et cetera, where we would set terms of reference, timeframes, because it's very difficult on all involved. And if you're particularly on the policing side, so we would serve a notice of investigation under the Police Services Act, hold that investigation in abeyance, do a workplace harassment or respect in the workplace investigation. That would at many different times take a significant period of time. That would end, whether it was substantiated, unsubstantiated. Then we would have to we still have to go and do a Police Services Act investigation. And so we're looking sometimes anywhere, you can see the time frame like 12, 14, 16, 18 months. And it really doesn't get at the heart of workplace restoration, workplace wellness, and actually solving the underlying issues and challenges. And so, yes, since 2015, as I alluded to in 2014, one of my key missions when I was, appointed as the chief was around workplace culture, workplace inclusion, the equity, inclusion, diversity piece. This has been ongoing work, and it's been advancing, albeit, all of these things never happen fast enough in my world. But I'm very proud of the team. I'm proud of our collective leadership team for the work we've been doing. And so we also are playing a little bit, in some ways, there's some historical investigations that have been ongoing. And so you see the cost of these come out. But some of the cost also includes workplace restoration, where we've actually continued to keep the individual involved around recommendations and guidance. In fact, one of our external legal firms actually did all of the education and all of the professional development for senior and mid leaders. And so there's all cost impacted there. But I think what we're trying to get to is that there's right now, when we look at a matter, everything goes down one road. And what we're trying to create is an opportunity to have multiple roads. So what is the best approach? How do we best manage this? What's the best outcome for everybody? And how do we actually do it to ensure that we're in compliance with, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, Bill 168, as well as then, this uniqueness of the Police Services Act, which will, I think, as you know, one of the advocacy pieces that, I'll be encouraging the board to continue is around Police Service Act reformation to actually modernize it towards modern employment law as we move forward. But again, hopefully that captures it, but we've just seen this growth and quite frankly, the way the organization manages and triages, I would say that our leadership team is doing a much better and much improved approach to managing this, where previously it may have been done differently or may have been done internally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Shantz, you had your hand up a moment ago. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to get into the conversation if you still wanted to.
Thanks. I think the chief pretty much answered my question. It was around the numbers and the increasing reporting. And I expect that with this new initiative that we'll see some statistics and some reporting that show hopefully some good outcomes. So thanks, looks good.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments today about this item? Seeing none, thank you so much, Superintendent Davis, for your presentation. That was great, and for the extra commentary by Chief Larkin. Thank you so much. We look forward to being updated about this initiative in the future as well. With that, I'm going to move on to 12.5, which is a common agreement with the region related to Network Catalyst and Wellbeing Waterloo, and I will turn this over to the Chief.
Thanks very much, Chair Schnarr. And there is a recommendation to enter into a Sagarman agreement to the Regional Municipality of Waterloo And as you can see, this is a little bit of a catch-up agreement. We've actually been fully advanced and had an individual seconded to and working as the network catalyst of Wellbeing Waterloo Region from June 21st, 2021, ending on March 31st, 2022. Of course, we do have an agreement between the service and the board. It has been shared with the board solicitor, but always subject to their support. And I guess in short, just to provide some insight, as the board is well aware, Wellbeing Waterloo Region has been also evolving and changing. And last year they actually posted for a network catalyst. One of our members who was actually working within our equity, inclusion, diversity team actually did apply and was successful in an external recruiting process. And as a result of that, the Region of Waterloo has been funding and providing annualized support to Wellbeing Waterloo Region. As a result of that, Mr. Lochner, the CAO of the Region of Waterloo, did reach out to me to suggest and inquire whether or not we would, enter into a secondment agreement as this was being developed and expanded so that our member, who's a longstanding excellent member, would not leave the employment with the police service for an unknown. And so internally we supported that. And of course, as I said, this is a retroactive agreement. The region has agreed to cover all of the compensation with the exception of they had an upset limit around benefits. You can see there is a financial implication to the police service. The 2021 figures, at $31,669, as well as, of course, prorated into 2022. Again, although this is a non-budgeted item, we believe that it's manageable within our current operating budget. I am recommending that the board approve this secondment. There's mutual interest, there's mutual benefits to the community as we look at the work that Wellbeing Waterloo Region's doing. Of course, the board had the opportunity to support and provide feedback to Laura, who's doing some work around this process. So again, subject to any pieces, and the uniqueness of this is the board had a policy on secondments that if it was not 100% cost recovered, the chief would come to the board. At some point, we may want to suggest that the board reconsider whether or not because we're starting to see more and more provincial agreements that don't have full cost recovery, but we're able to manage within. And so there's some different processes we may want to consider at a different point with the board. But again, minimal financial risk. We believe that the community benefits outweigh that. And I'm recommending, subject to the board's questions, that you approve this retroactively.
Thank you so much. Comments and questions, and then I'm going to ask for a motion after that's completed. Mr. McLean.
Yeah, through you, Chair Schnarr, I'd be happy to move the motion. And I would say that this follows along the board's strategic plan of being more engaged in the community, or continuing to be engaged in the community and look for and the great work that Waterloo or Wellbeing Waterloo Region has been doing. So I've moved that motion, and I think maybe Jill and the chief can bring back on the secondments, because we have seen quite a few of these as it relates to either the province or the OPP, et cetera. So there's probably something where we can streamline that, but that I think you could bring back as a separate matter to the board. But I'm happy to move the motion as printed.
Thank you. Councillor Kiefer, do you have your hand up to second it, or is that for a comment, or would you like to do both?
Oh, I'm seconding it. Thanks.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Giovinazzo, so let's do some discussion here and then we can vote on the motion.
A quick question through you, Madam Chair. What I thought I heard from the chief is that there is a member of the service that has already applied. When I read the recommendation, when I first read it, it sounded like the recommendation was asking for a secondment of a civilian member of the board, which I thought was our board. So just a point of clarification on this motion, if I could, please. That's how I read the motion here and the recommendation.
Yeah, and so thanks so much. If I can, it's a technicality. All employees are members. It's a civilian professional, but they're employees of the board. And so It's just a technicality. Actually, when I read it myself multiple times, I thought, should we just clarify the language to service? The technical piece is they're employees of the board. This member is a civilian professional, was assigned to our equity diversity unit. They're actually in the role. They've been in the role since June. We agreed to this with Bruce. Of course, bureaucracy a little bit to get things sorted out between the region and the service. And then, of course, there's a process perspective, which ultimately I own, but I did support it because I think all of it outweighed it. But obviously there's a slight variation. And so to comply with previous board policy, just that compensation piece of the benefits, the region's not able to cover that based on their funding model. And so I'm recommending that we cover that. And I have absolutely zero concerns from a financial perspective.
I'm not opposed to what was being pushed past here. It was just when I read civilian member of the board, I took it as the civilian member of this board. So thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Gimenoso. I would have asked exactly the same question right after you had not asked that, because I had the same interpretation when I read it. Any other questions or comments related to this? And if not, I don't see any. So Ian has moved, seconded by Carl, to approve the secondment agreement. Can I ask all of those in favor of this? Just indicate by raising your hand. I see unanimous consent there, so I don't need to ask for any people who do not agree or abstain. So with that, the motion passes. Thank you so much, colleagues. Our next item on the agenda is item 12.6, which is the monthly Chief of Police report, and I will turn that over to Chief.
Thanks so much, Chair Schnarr and members of the board. I'll first begin by wishing all of you a happy 2022. I hope that all of you had an opportunity to celebrate a holiday season with you and your families as we continue to deal with some significant community challenges around the global pandemic. And our lives are not quite simply as they once were. We continue to manage and navigate all those issues. I do want to take an opportunity on behalf of Deputy Chief Crowell and Deputy Chief Hilden to recognize Chair Redmond and Vice Chair Kiefer for all of their leadership in 2021. We very much appreciate their wisdom, the leadership of the board. But from occasion to occasion, we deal specifically with the chair and vice chair, and we want to recognize and thank them for their leadership, as well as I'd like to recognize Councillor Kiefer for his national leadership as a member of the Canadian Association of Police Governors. And in my nighttime role as this Canadian Association Chiefs of President, we often cross paths with both of our boards. And so as well, equally, we also want to congratulate, we look forward to working with Chair Redmond and yourself, Vice Chair Schnarr, as we look ahead into 2022. I think there's lots of opportunities for our service, lots of opportunities for our community, and I think brighter days are ahead as we continue to address the global pandemic. This is our first meeting since December of 2021. It's also our first meeting since the board's operational and capital 2022 budget was passed, and I want to recognize the board and the leadership team, and in particular Director Hand, for all the work in navigating a challenging process. But it's a very good process. Democracy is an important part of the work that we do, and the feedback that we receive from regional council around our budget, around concerns, around the evolution of policing, it will all formulate the path forward for 2022 and the work that we're doing in our communities, as highlighted by Inspector Houston today. These are our key initiatives that actually drive who we are as a police service. And so we're very excited as we look to that. We had a fairly steady 2021, although we were continuing to police in the pandemic. We did see a number of key pieces that we've discussed at different points. And in February, the board will see significant year-end reviews of 2021 from a data perspective, from an operational perspective, which also set the framework for what this 2022 looked like. Again, as the board is aware, right prior to the end of 2021, mid-December, we started to see some transition around the impact of COVID-19 and the global pandemic, and in particular, the new variant. Our service, our Emergency Operations Center, led by Inspector Donna Mancuso, made a number of organizational shifts to ensure that we were proactive, to ensure that we were actually ensuring workforce protection. And we're proud of the continued work that they're doing. We've been reporting on a regular basis around workplace absenteeism, but I'm very pleased to say that the overall impact of the current impact of the pandemic has been minimal. Yes, we've seen more members who have been impacted, more of their family members impacted, but we've seen changes. And we've been able to, with our shift rotation and our business continuity model, continue to deliver a high level of services. And we've not had to actually interrupt or actually adjust any of the delivery of our services. Naturally, our divisions are closed from a protection workplace in the sense that they're closed for just general inquiries. You have to actually screen in and come in. But we continue to monitor this consistently. We're still deploying a work from home strategy for employees that can do so. And that's about 15% of our workforce. And credit to Director Hillhorst and the IT team for continuing to advance that. I think it's version 7 of the work from home. And I will candidly admit, I'm hoping that at some point our versions are out and we're actually sustaining a normal operation and all the things that come with that. The start of 2022 has been challenging from a call, demand, and a crime perspective. I think the board and our community has witnessed, particularly starting with New Year's Eve, a series of violent crime. And I always caution, it does raise concerns, and it should raise concerns, but I'm extremely confident Deputy Hilton and her team within neighborhood and policing and investigations have a series of strategies, are working extensively on addressing some of those pieces. But it's difficult we're 19 days into the year to pull any trends and patterns. There's always uniqueness. I think as we discussed today, society is complex, but crime is also equally complex. A couple of key pieces of concerns obviously are around the robberies that have been occurring, in particular when we look at commercial robberies. But again, I do want to highlight and take a moment to recognize recently, last Friday, we had a commercial robbery at a jewelry store in the city of Waterloo at Conestoga Mall. Special thanks to the employees of the jewelry store for remaining calm. These were 3 suspects that were armed with axes and sledgehammers. And it obviously was very concerning, but a private security guard assisted in the apprehension of one of the suspects, which takes great courage, takes great bravery, as well as citizens actually lent a significant hand to the investigating officers around witness and statements. And obviously we were able to make a second arrest. All of these suspects, 2 are in custody. 1 is currently continues to be part of our investigation. The 2 suspects were from Toronto. So once again, it highlights the uniqueness and the transient nature of how crime is flowing through Waterloo region. And then equally, we saw Wellesley, a commercial bank targeted, which is unique as well. We often don't see that, but again, it speaks to the uniqueness that our townships are changing. The proximity to other large counties is also changing the demand on service. And then, of course, on Friday evening, within a short period of time, we saw 3 pharmacy robberies. And of course, we've seen 6 robberies year to date of pharmacies. And what is of interest in this is that those that are actually targeting generally independent pharmacies are not looking for money. They're not looking for other products. They're specifically targeting prescription pills, which our investigative team believes are then being trafficked illicitly within our community. And I think that underpoints and pins the continued advocacy of this board around addiction, around strong housing models. And I know there's a provincial housing summit today. As a police service, we still believe that if we can solve housing, if we can address poverty, and if we can address social disparities, then naturally other challenges of crime will also find better outcomes and better solutions. And we all have a role to play around a wider systems approach to how we build safe communities. But year to date, we've had 20 robberies compared to 12 of last year. And so it's a natural concern. I want to reassure the board that Deputy Hilton and Superintendent Fenton are working on a strategy. Our robbery team is actively involved in doing a significant amount of work. Also, tragically, in the last 24 hours, we lost 2 citizens to fatal motor vehicle collisions. These are always sad with a significant impact, And, regrettably, both of these happened within our rural community. And so ongoing work continues in those major investigations. They're complex, but they have a ripple impact across our communities. And so our thoughts are with all involved in those fatal collisions. But again, we do have a very progressive road safety strategy that is rolling out with specialized traffic teams with significant allotment across all of our municipalities to ensure an equitable approach to road safety, but also targeting key areas as we roll through. I also want to take a moment and celebrate January is Crime Stoppers Month. And I'd like to send my personal thanks on behalf of our organization to the Crime Stoppers Board, led by Chair Pat DeLay, who's a community volunteer, who's been a longtime volunteer, as well as Detective Constable Daryl Paquette, who's our service liaison. Crime Stoppers plays an invaluable role of providing information and anonymity to drive significant police investigations. And although over the number of years, some of their prominence has been maybe less within our community, it doesn't actually equate to the work that's being done by these volunteers to make a difference. They're independent of policing. We do have one officer that liaises and works with them. But of course, across our province and across our nation, Crime Stoppers is a significant movement. And I want to celebrate their success as we continue. As we head into February, as I alluded to, we'll be coming to the board with a series of year-end reviews. But in closing, I just want to recognize the continued work of all of our members who are committed to making a difference every single day. Naturally, the board gets to see a unique perspective and a unique insight. And our commitment through 2022 is to ensure that our community gets to see glimpses of the great work that continues to happen every single day. Of course, it's not without challenges. It's not without imperfection, because we are a human system, and the delivery of service that we provide is humanized. And so again, we look forward to 2022. We think there's lots of opportunities to advance the board strategic plan for a greater safety, greater outcomes in our community, as well as continued building of relations. And I'm really very much candidly looking forward to, this is great. The Hollywood Square style is very efficient and effective. But I think that, as we continue to work, and the work that staff Goodman and Inspector Houston is doing and others, is that, ultimately our bread and butter is actually with people, and it's on the ground, it's in communities, it's in neighborhoods. And even as a leadership team internally, if we want to advance respect in the workplace, if we want to advance a better organization, our work has to be not secluded simply to our office. We have to actually be able to get out and be with people. And so I do believe that there's brighter days ahead as we continue to deal with the pandemic. But subject to any questions, we want to reaffirm, Mark, Shirley, and I, and the entire leadership team, our commitment to a great 2022. We look forward to working with Chair Redmond and Vice Chair Schnarr and the entire board collectively for a better, thriving Waterloo region. So again, happy January, and hard to believe that we're almost into February, which is the month of celebrating Black history, but also the month of love. So I think February is going to be a great month.
Thank you so much, Chief Larkin. Before we move on, any questions or comments for the chief based on his discussion? Seeing none, I will keep moving forward. Do any members have any new business they would like to bring forward? I don't see any hands going up there. Item 14, any future agenda items anyone would like to raise or put on the record for next time? No. Item 15, any information items any board members would like to bring forward? I'm sensing a trend here. Before I go to the last item, which is adjournment, just a media notice that once we are adjourned, members of the media are welcome to log into Zoom with the login details that were provided, where Chief Larkin will be available to you to take questions from the media. So with that, I'm going to move to item 16, which is adjournment. Can I get a motion? May I ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting? Why do I see everyone wants to stay? I see no hands going up. Now I see hands going up. Moved by Mr. Giovinazzo, seconded by Mr. McLean. All of those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Stay safe, stay warm as temperatures drop. And I look forward to